Here.
Please have a seat. It's time to go. Hi, Trevor. You have a seat here. Okay. Please have a seat. Good morning, everybody, and welcome together to this fantastic event, the Rotorcraft Symposium. The 11th Rotorcraft Symposium, and you are welcome because here is a European Rotorcraft community and more than the European one because we have about 22 nationalities. Just few technical information at the beginning. As you know, we have the live streaming today. So if you have to talk, if you have to question, etc., please wait for having a microphone because on live streaming, it's absolutely necessary to talk in front of the microphone. Another point is, if there is an emergency fire exit, go there, outside, and we will be all together outside the hotel. So, live streaming is one point, and the second point is a Slido where you can have any question on your smartphone, tablet, computer, etc. So we could receive plenty of questions, and we will decide the top 3 or the top 5 of the question depending the numbers of the questions. So please try to consider the most key element you want to ask. So before to go to Patrick Key, I just want to present the people over there. Patrick Key, EASA director. Here to my right side, this is David Solar, the head of the Rotorcraft department in the certification directorate. Trevor Woods, our director, certification director, and Clément, my colleagues. I am the deputy head of the Rotorcraft department. So thank you very much to be there. Now I will call Patrick to start the meeting. Thank you very much.
So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I will just
I don't know if you plan to show anything on the screen, but okay. I hope you can see me. It's a real pleasure for me to open this Rotorcraft Symposium. I'm very impressed by the crowd that I see, and since it's still early in the morning, I guess that you have not all come for shopping in the Christmas market. So we are very glad to see you and to have those 2 days of discussions on helicopters. As Jean-Marc mentioned, 22 different countries are represented today. I would like to, in particular, thank our colleagues from VFA and Transport Canada of being here. It's important for us to be the overall Rotorcraft community talking about themes of common interest and in particular about safety. So this is a very big show for us. I'm sure it will be a very fruitful discussion that you are going to have. We are starting discussions in order to see if we can make it an even bigger show, but I leave it to David and Trevor maybe to talk to you more about this. Maybe 1 or 2 words on EASA and the transformation of EASA before I come to the specific points of the Rotorcraft. As you know, EASA was created in 2004. That's 13 years ago, and we have in the last 2 years gone through a very important process, which was to renew, refresh what we call our basic regulation, which is the founding act of EASA. And the good news is that after 2 years of negotiations, hopefully tomorrow, the new founding regulation will be adopted, and that's going to be hopefully a great change for EASA. I will not give you a lot of details about what is in there. It's a very thick document. If you're interested, you will be able to download it from our website. But there are maybe 3 topics which may be of interest to you today. The first topic is the fact that, as you may know, in the current regulation, the state aircraft are specifically excluded from the scope of our work. State aircraft, that means also military aircraft, or police aircraft, customs, and so on and so forth. They are excluded from our scope of work for certification, but also for operations. And this was creating a certain number of issues of interoperability, for instance, for the police forces, which were having problems because the national licenses were not recognized across borders for pilots, for instance, or for operations. It's also created problems for the certification of some of the rotorcraft, for instance, where EASA was not the competent authority and the national authorities were not necessarily having the technical skills to do it. With the new basic regulation, and I can assure you that this will be adopted because it was not a controversial issue, this notion of state aircraft disappears for the ones who volunteer. That means that if you, industry, you are interested in having an EASA certification of a military rotorcraft, you can choose to do so. If a country, and we have a certain number of countries which already contacted us to do that, if a country decides that all their state aircraft are going to come under the full EASA regime, they may choose to do so. And this is going to be, I think, a major change for the future. Second, a major change is the fact that in the new basic regulation, it is expected that multinational organizations in Europe can choose EASA as the competent authority. So, as you know, today, EASA is the competent authority for airworthiness. Tomorrow, multinational organizations for training, maintenance, operations may choose, EASA as a competent authority, and may choose to become a truly European organization certified by European institutions. The third major change, or emphasis I should say, is the recognition by the legislator that the aviation is international by nature and that we, as EASA, should play a more important role on the international scene. That means in ICAO for standards, but also means in the bilateral relationship with our bilateral partners, such as the US, Canada, and Brazil, and soon China and Japan. That means also more regional presence with regional offices of EASA in the world. And we opened just two months ago an EASA office in Singapore for the Southeast Asia region to support the industry, to support the growth of aviation in these regions. So this is, in a nutshell, what's happening soon for EASA. Let me now talk specifically about Rotorcraft. And when I prepared for today, I was quite surprised by what my colleagues told me about the safety record in your domain. In 2016, 143 fatal accidents worldwide, among which 11 took place in Europe. And the most disturbing factor for me, the most disturbing fact, is that the statistics stay about the same, have been about the same for the last 10 years. Whereas in all the other domains of aviation, including on general aviation, where we're having a major roadmap in order to develop new safety rules and so on and so forth, the trend has been to have a very steady and important decrease in the incidents and in the safety targets. I think that this is something that we absolutely need to work on. And it's not us, it's not the FAA, it's not Transport Canada, which alone can work on it. It's all of us. Because when we look at the safety incidents, most of the time, it's a chain of events. Most of the times, there is something which has to do with the perception from the pilots of a certain context, weather, for instance. Most of the time, there is also a link to maintenance, a link to operations, training, and so on and so forth. We need absolutely to work together in order to increase the level of safety in this domain. I hope you can agree with me on this. You can agree with our colleagues. This is certainly going to be, in the next years, a key priority for us in EASA to try and work together, reach out to the community in order to increase the level of safety in this domain. On the other things that you will see in the next 2 days, you will talk about innovation. This is also something where it's at the same time great opportunities, in particular to increase the level of safety, but also great challenges. The connected aircraft is creating challenges in terms of cybersecurity. Big data projects. You know that we are currently investing in a big data project in EASA, mostly for the commercial fixed-wing aviation for the time being, but we are starting to discuss on how we could possibly expand it to cover rotorcraft operations in a format that needs to be defined. So big data, data exchange, data streaming coming from the aircraft or going from the ground to the aircraft is creating a lot of opportunities in terms of learning the behavior of the system. It's also creating challenges, in particular in terms of cyber security, but also in terms of data privacy, data protection, and so on and so forth. And we are willing to have discussions with you on how we can work together on this as well. Drones, the difference between drones and rotorcraft, I don't think there is a very strict definition of what is the limit between a drone and an aircraft or a rotorcraft. When you look at some of the projects that we are working on, by the way, is it a drone? Is it a rotorcraft? I don't think I care, as long as the safety target, the safety performance of the aircraft for its passengers as well as for the citizens who are on the ground is guaranteed. This is going to create a lot of opportunities, challenges, electrical propulsion for rotorcraft as well, hybrid propulsion. This is going to be extremely interesting years ahead of us. And we are starting in EASA to organize ourselves in order to be able to support innovation, in order to be able to learn from you how you see things, how you are innovating, and also hope that you can also learn from us on what are the constraints that we may have, or what would be the best practices, and so on and so forth. So, very exciting times, a lot of work ahead of us. Safety is our priority for those 2 days, but for our helicopter strategy, rotorcraft strategy for the future. And I wish you very, very fruitful discussions, very challenging discussions, and I hope you will also enjoy the town of Cologne before Christmas. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Patrick. We will support everybody for going on that way, because the safety is probably the key element for each of us. So now, the second speaker will be I'm Arke from EASA. Nice to see you today. I'm the chairman of the European Helicopter Association. In the last 30 years, has been at the beginning graduated from aeronautical engineering in 1975, and has been a senior manager position in the helicopter business many times. So please, this is to you.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you to the asset management. Thank you, Mr. Key. When you were talking about the need of all of us to work together in safety, of course, it's just in line with what I'm going to say, although in a very different way, but it doesn't matter. At the end, the objective is the same. I would like to thank all the organization for giving me this opportunity. Well, I started working in the helicopter industry in 1980. This means 37 years ago. Many things have changed since then. And what today will be my last speech, as I will be retiring from EASA at the end of April next year, I want to talk about something new for you that is extremely important for all of us, although it translates in a very simple word. You will not believe it. I'm going to talk about safety. Well, the word safety. Safety and I have been working together since I started working as general manager of a helicopter operator in 1993, and still today. And you will probably be thinking, oh my God, another guy going to talk about safety, going to give a speech about safety. We are fed up about it, but this is not the case. We have to talk about safety always. And if I can say something that can be useful for you, okay, I will be satisfied at the end of this speech. Don't worry, it will not be too long. In 10 minutes I'm gone, and somebody else will talk about other issues. Well, the word safety has been occasionally misused in order to achieve goals that had nothing to do with safety. This was my point of view. For instance, when in the past, I will not say today, I want to be politically correct. The unions were asking for a reduction in duty times and were always using safety, safety, safety as the main excuse to obtain duty time reductions. I can tell you at that time, after big negotiation, we were giving them duty time reductions, and the day after, the negotiators were coming to me and said, hey, Jaime, may I work a little bit more, then we'll get more money. And, well, I want to believe that this is not the case anymore. The lack of safety generates accidents, and the accidents kill and injure people. But the lack of accident does not mean that we're working safely. Probabilities play a very important role, and to reduce these probabilities to almost zero, it takes a combined effort of designers, manufacturers, EASA, NAAs, pilots, maintainers, ATM, and many other people to achieve it. An accident, for me, is one of the worst things, generates a deep and dramatic emotional impact in the families and in the company when you are suffering a fatal accident. Also, the accident is triggering insurance premium rises. On the other side, an accident generates an increase of operational cost, contrary to what many people are saying, that safety is expensive. Of course, safety is expensive, but it's much better to spend the money in safety than to suffer a fatal accident. This has to be understood by our customers. We are negotiating with them. When an accident occurs in a listed company, very easily it's going to happen that the price of the shares will go down, at least momentarily. In a private equity company, well, if a private equity company owns an operator, normally these kind of companies are mainly concerned to increase the value of their shares in order to be able to sell the company as soon as possible at the maximum price. And for them, an accident is also a big problem. But my experience is that, well, they are mainly concerned to generate the growth of the EBITDA, to reduce the debt, and it's very difficult to make them understand what is just culture, and the safety is an investment, it's not only a cost. Well, as you know, that we at EHA, we are working to promote the importance of the helicopters amongst the whole European community. Helicopters save lives, enhance the regional connectivity, makes communities more secure, and value to the welfare to the economies in member nations. And the increase of safety will also increase the full integration of the rotorcraft in the European transport. That's why safety is so important. But I would say that sometimes the safety perception is even more important. We can work very safe, but if the society does not perceive that we are safe, we have a problem. We are all aware, and in line with what Mr. Key said, the high accident rates all around the world, but the highest accident rates, of course, mainly in private and in training activities and training segments. And it is a fact that the offshore sector has the best safety performance of any other sector, and even though they are working very hard to improve their safety performance. However, a single accident of an offshore helicopter in the North Sea, even if the cause of the accident is clearly identified and the corrections or the mitigation measures are taken, is still generating doubts in the community about the safety of our transport mean. Heli Offshore, which as you know is a member of EHA, was created with the specific mission of safety by collaboration. This is a very good approach, as one accident from our competitors is also our accident. Well, in my opinion, we must not compete in safety. We all have to work together to improve the safety performance. Incidents and accidents reporting have to be shared to find solutions and to avoid that the other companies could have the same problem. My message to all the small companies that do not have the resources to incorporate a good safety system is to take advantage of the safety experience of the big ones. We all know that the first step to improve safety in a small company and in all the companies is to have a reliable safety culture. In a company, and the company needs a full support of the top management or the owner, if it's a small company, but we have to take into account also that all these small companies do not have enough self-critical mass of information to support their risk assessments based on their experience. There are companies that are flying from years without any accident. One day they have 1 or 2 fatal accidents in 1 year, and they don't know why. They think they were safety, but they are not. Therefore, the interchange of information is vital. The key to improving safety performance is a combination of industry culture, for sure, human factors, technology, regulations, experienced personnel, and some others. Allow me to make a small comment on experienced personnel. Since years, the helicopter industry, and especially the HEM segment, is claiming against the FCL 065. You know that this FCL 065 is not allowing pilots above 60 years to perform single pilot CAT operations. So far, in my opinion and the opinion of many others, there is no medical reason to justify this regulation. Well, although this is not the place now to enter in details, I'm sure EASA should know that we are obliged to retire fit, experienced pilots very often, and to replace them with young ones without enough experience and eventually creating additional safety risks. I urge EASA to speed up in this assessment of the data. I know this is coming, but everything is slow. You know, the problem we have with the operators is that they are claiming to us, to EHA, for instance, what are you doing? We are doing nothing. You know, but we know that the rhythm of work in Europe is complex, is long, and especially in EASA also. And that's something that we have to transmit to our people that are always waiting or expecting very quick results, but it's not possible. When talking about regulations, we welcome the approach toward performance-based regulations. But the helicopter operations are so diverse that I hope that one day we will be able to measure the safety performance of every kind of services. This is not easy. And the first step we need to have reliable data about exposure. Many NAAs, and therefore EASA, do not have the number of hours flown by each activity. Many people give for granted that the amount of hours flown will be the best exposure data to be considered. Some of them are here. However, for me, this is only the first step, but not enough. I will go deeper into the analysis. There are helicopter activities where the number of flight hours is not relevant compared to others where it is absolutely relevant. You will probably agree with me that 50 helicopters flying aerial work, if these 50 helicopters are flying 4 hours each, the risks are very different compared to one helicopter doing 200 hours of transport. And therefore, we had to consider other points of view to know the exposure. Therefore, the additional step will be to obtain the number of helicopters, operational helicopters involved in one activity. Also, to have the number of services, takeoffs, landings. Is quite complex. First of all, we need to have the flight hours. Then we have to go further. Yeah? Well, I leave it to you to think about how we could better measure the safety performance and the influence on the future regulations evolution. On top of the regulations, safety promotion is an essential tool that has proven its effectiveness. This year, EASA, starting last year, organized a new advisory body scheme. We welcome very much. This is including a Rotorcraft committee, the RCOM. We thought it was going to be the RSC, but suddenly it was changed to RCOM, for those who do not know. And I'm sure the RCOM will play a very important role in explaining the priorities of the helicopter industry to the EASA management. Somehow, hanging from the RCOM, we have the ESPNR, I really have problems to spell all these kind of words. European Safety Promotion Network Rotorcraft, yeah, replacing the EASA. The EASA did a fantastic job, in my opinion, and the European Safety Promotion Network will have to produce new safety promotion material, and I hope that the EASA will allocate some budget to this activity, as it is foreseen in the European Plan for Aviation Safety. Well, we cannot rely only on experts. We have many experts that were voluntarily working with us in the past in the EASA, and we have to remotivate them, yeah, to continue working on that. But we need some additional incentive also from EASA. Allow me to finish my speech with a personal reflection. So many years working in the helicopter industry have given me an enormous satisfaction. What I call, many of us, starting many years ago, we have become helisexuals. We are always fit with helicopters. We cannot talk about anything else than helicopters. Yeah? And now that I'm close to retirement, I cannot say good things about this community, and I appreciate the good friends that I've been able to meet. Even if I have had a lot of discussions, fights with our customers, with our authorities, okay, I have forgotten all the bad moments with one exception. Those related with fatal accidents that obliged me to leave several dramatic personal situations when I had to accompany families of the deceased. This is something that I do not invite to anybody that will have this problem. I wish you that in a not too distant future, nobody in our industry will have to live similar experiences. Please, I hope so. Fly safety. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now, I am calling Matteo Ragazzi from Leonardo, and we will start the presentation just now. So, Matteo is yes, please. He's a head of design in Leonardo. He worked from long time in that company, and he has been one of the most active person regarding the 139 and the 189 in terms of certifications. So I will stop here. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Let's see if it works. So again, on safety, I know it's not going to be, it's a usual theme, but it's also about pride, okay? So the ideas we had was basically to react to the flat rate of accident ratios we've seen in these years. And we developed some scenarios, ideas, and things to make things change. So this is one, and well, the acronyms will be explained along the presentation. So we all know that we are not the guys with the best reputation in aviation versus fixed wing, as I think we already said it. And we basically have a lot of reasons for that. There are tons of peculiarities in the way we operate helicopters. This is not airport-to-airport operations, for example. There are inherent risks, but the biggest issue we have is complacency. We had allowed to match complacency in these years. So we were trying to challenge this situation. Now, EASA every year publishes an annual safety review, which is a good document to start with. The safety reviews stipulates the risk we face through safety risk portfolios, and that applies also to rotorcraft operations, dividing in type of operations. So the interesting story is that they do depend on geographical location, type of environment, type of operations, and class of platforms. But the other bit that is interesting is that the risks are stipulated across the years. So it gives an idea of the cumulative risk, not the risk per flight hour. Some examples. This is actually an excerpt coming from offshore operations. As you can see, we had things coming from the possible encounters with birds, icing, crew resource management, system reliability, tons of these things. So we're talking about occurrences and near misses, so things that could go wrong, depending on a number of factors. This is actually the other commercial helicopters. Now, the span time is between 2012 and 2016, okay? That means that in 98 cases, there could be a strike, or there has been a strike, that could actually result in something dramatic or not, depending on the number of facts, for example. So we do have numbers telling us this situation. Now, EASA is not the only organization performing this kind of things. Flight safety is doing it, and so on. So there is a number of organizations that can give you a full picture of the story, which is okay. So we don't have a problem with pictures, but the point that is visible in what we see is that there's one fact that is bad news. There is a fundamental gap between the way we certify helicopters, so airworthiness per se, versus the way we use helicopters. Ops and airworthiness do not talk enough with each other. That's a gap that is actually killing us. The second bit that is actually interesting is good news. We had people that actually were confronted with a similar situation. So aircraft operate in high-risk scenarios. Let's talk about these ETOPS. So 1985, fixed-wing commercial air transport had to cross the ocean. The question was, can I do it with a twin? And the answer was, yeah, we can do it. Through the fact that there was a number of safety provisions that were reined in this ETOPS kind of application. It was so successful that we fly today with twins. The safety record is good enough, and it's been extended to multi-ops and engine ops in general, overall style. So Arctic environment, for example, not just the Atlantic or Pacific. So we started the situation from there as a starting point. This AMC 20-6 is actually regulating that kind of thing. And we proposed something equivalent called EHOPS, just to use the same acronym with an H in the middle. So the question could be that what is the Atlantic Ocean for fixed-wing applications could be North Sea for us, for example. So in a specific scenario, that as a test scenario. So AMC 20-6 covers a lot of things. It goes from design requirements to safety requirements and safety analysis, maintenance, RFM procedures dedicated to ETOPS operation, master mail, human factors, operational aspect, and training. So it tries to cover and catch all the aspects of the equation. If you look at a similar approach taken for us, it means that they define what they call significant systems. Group 1 is those systems that actually do depend on the number of engines. Group 2 are systems that do not depend on the number of engines. So they classify the system they have on board. Significant systems are things that can affect the capability to carry out a safe flight, ETOPS flight, or a diversion. Okay? So they did an analysis where the result can be actually a diversion with a time limit, something like that. Not so far away from what we can do today. We do have those data, by the way, because we do already safety assessments for all our systems in all certifications, so data are available. So we can play those data in the new framework, and by the way, not all systems can be classified the same. If I go beyond a certain latitude, let's say Norway, clearly icing is very relevant for my ETOPS, not if I do something equivalent in the low portion of the latitude. So systems can be classified as Group 1 and Group 2 significant systems and attached to the kind of mission you want to perform, what is the environment, and so on. Okay? You can actually have rules that are appendixes to the current code of rules, as IFR is today, CAT-A is already today, and Part 29 is already that way. All aircraft systems, flight manual procedures, normal and emergency procedures, performance and limitations, and so on, like, for example, the safety provisions we have embedded in the design because of airworthiness requirements can be cross-read and analyzed to verify what do I have on board to minimize the risk. Today, we do it in a sense without looking at scenarios, frankly speaking. We do type of operations like IFR, single pilot, dual pilot, and so on. We don't do it versus a scenario very thoroughly. This can be done, frankly. So let's have a check of what we have today in our pocket. If we look at risk associated with engine failures, we've been having Cat A for decades with a lot of developments, and Cat A means a lot of things, not just the performance of an OAI. Okay, it's a really high demanding paragraph to meet or a set of rules. Drive system failures, those things have increased over the years. Now we have technology and capability to do a long run for dry run capabilities. It's no longer just 30 minutes. It's also true that, on the other hand, we have also damage tolerance that can be applied to rotating components and transmissions, not just to fixed part of the aircraft. If you look at burst strikes, the way we have been meeting this requirement has been way more thorough over the years. This is now a system paragraph. It's not just a structural paragraph. So threat assessment is performed on the functioning of the system caused by a burst strike. It's different. Same business for lightning, which is now very much thorough in terms of compliance. Fatigue and fatigue-induced failures, we have damage tolerance, which is already an asset which we play. Icing, we've been doing full icing and limited icing. There are developments. I think there is room for other developments, more pragmatic and more operational suitable. Crash and post-crash fires, we have already the application, the rules. They are effective, frankly speaking. And collisions, we are developing better the HTOS, TCAS, and so on, because we need to make it more adapt to the scenario. So in general, we're not talking sci-fi. We're talking something that we have already. Latest designs, clearly. Safety requirements, we always do the safety analysis on the likelihood of a failure to occur versus the provisions you have. Now, this safety analysis would require us, which is still possible, to calculate exposure times for not just for the ETOPS, but also for diversions, which is exactly what ETOPS have been doing for the flights over the Atlantic. There are aircraft certified for a diversion of 60 minutes, 90 minutes, 120, 180, depending on the number of facts they have on board and not only on board. So we can actually adapt the calculations. By the way, we also have the ditching possibility and control ditching, but it's just the last resource. We don't want to rely on it immediately. There is a weak point which requires compromises, which is critical parts. Helicopters are full of critical parts and single point of failures. Airplanes have the luxury not to have those many. But we can actually do something which is very specific. Management of critical parts have been subject to a number of working groups, which are actually able to make things different. The design assessment is not actually a secondary asset. Design assessment done on rotors and the drive systems have been actually required by the latest certifications. And I can tell you that they do make a difference, actually. And they do have an impact on maintenance and the way you deal with systems. It's way more thorough, the approach through design assessments. And then we have HAMS. HAMS has been in the field for years and years, we all know that, but there's no much coordination in the way we make use of the HAMS. There is a pragmatic way that can be used in this kind of operation. Maintenance, you can imagine clearly that an EHOPS operation may require a different maintenance schedule based on concepts which are derived by what I said before. ETOPS, fixed-wing operations, do exactly that. So it can be done. Procedures, we analyzed our flight manuals, and sometimes we simply say, okay, land immediately because it's the easiest way, and we consider that to be safe. Actually, it's not always true. In an EHOP scenario, you may have to use all resources you have on board to avoid the risk like that. So procedures can be devised to have a diversion and to manage an emergency in a way that it helps compatible way. Master mail, you can imagine there is an impact on master mail. You can conduct a mission with something that is not going okay, maybe not any HOPS mission. So we need to actually look at master mail. It can be done, actually. Human factors, you can imagine how big is this chapter. There are actually procedures that can be devised, crew resource management, flight planning, considering the diversion, knowing the meteo, tons of things can be done. We were thinking, for example, about for what is actually human factors in the cockpit to develop an FCOM dedicated to EHOPS. We have already an FCOM for oil and gas. We could do exactly the same for EHOPS. Training. I think there is a lot of people in the room that know what it means training. We're not talking about type rating and recurrency. We're talking about an EHOPS training. So things concerning the management of a diversion, decision making, knowing the environment where you operate, so training on the environment, and a lot of other things that you can actually put in the field and just put them together in a group that is actually attached to EHOPS operations. So it's management of degraded mode and an area of operations. This would be the focus. So in conclusion, actually can be done. Clearly, the idea is feasible. The objection that could come to our mind is the cost, because we do believe that the impacts of these paragraphs can be actually dramatic. But if you look at the ETOPS experience, the story is not cost. We fly on twins. We were flying on 4-engine aircraft in the 80s. The operators are flourishing per se. The cost of tickets has gone down and the traffic has gone up. It means that we can make the equation work. Okay, so it's an idea that is worth exploring. We are committing a lot on this, and we do believe this could be the biggest answer to the present situation, flat rate accident situation we have today. Thank you.
Thank you to Matteo Ragazzi. I'm glad now to be welcoming on stage Airbus Helicopters. I hope you appreciate that as a regulator we have two first speakers, one from Airbus Helicopter and the next one from Leonardo. Before we get started, this is the last presentation before the coffee break. You will have also the possibility to have a question and answer session right after this presentation. Microphone will be in the room, but if you feel too shy or if you fear to forget, you can use Slido. It's a free app. You just enter your question and we take them on the order. So I'm welcoming now Philippe Gabry from Airbus Helicopter. He will present on the racer and also the need for an evolution of the certification and operational rules that are associated to this.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, I am happy to present to you the Project Racer, a high-speed rotorcraft demonstrator developed by Airbus Helicopters. First, I will introduce the Clean Sky 2 activities within Airbus Helicopters, the objective of Racer demonstrator, and I will describe the aircraft. After, I will present you the preliminary assessment done in terms of potential certification requirement and operational aspect. Clean Sky 2 program for Airbus Helicopters. Clean Sky 2 includes several platforms hosting different demonstration projects. Racer is a part of a fast rotorcraft demonstrator platform. Racer is a compound rotorcraft technological demonstrator directly derived of the concept demonstrator experimented by Airbus Helicopter X-Cube. Like of the all Clean Sky 2 projects, Racer is developed in a large European partnership, as indicated on this slide. Today, it involves 8 main partners that we call core partners, and 17 partners, including most of the case, several entities associated in a team. 5 additional teams will join shortly the project. Why a fast rotorcraft? Helicopters have unique flying performances at low speed with the capability to perform long time hovering and able to take off and land on small surfaces. It allows to recover persons in difficulty, to drop rescuers, to land directly in an hospital deck, or to ensure door-to-door transport. The main drawback of helicopters is a limited cruise speed in comparison with other aircraft solutions. The purpose of a fast rotorcraft is to fill the mobility gap between conventional helicopters and turboprop airplanes by keeping the vertical takeoff capabilities of an helicopters. It will ensure a better efficiency for helicopter mission when the speed is crucial. For SAR and emergency services, the impact of higher speed is not only the possibility to provide assistance to persons in difficulties in a very short time, but also to improve the coverage of a given area within that we call the golden hours, with a reduced footprint. The golden hours is commonly a grid time criteria to ensure a rescue mission with the highest chance of success. In the example shown, 8 bays are necessary to cover a given area within 1 hour with an helicopter flying at 140 knots. With a fast rotorcraft flying at 220 knots, a better coverage is obtained with only 5 bases, limiting the need in terms of ground infrastructure and fleet size. For passenger transport, the possibility to link within 1 hour big metropolis open new perspective for door-to-door transport with an improved level of comfort. Configuration of Racer. X-Cube demonstrator was built reusing as far as possible existing components in order to explore the capability of the concept. We reuse a H155 serial main rotor. We start from a Dauphin fuselage. We use a main gearbox which has been derived from the H175 helicopter. We use also a general aviation propellers as lateral rotors. Only wing and tail are the main specific components. Main achievement reached with X-Cube after more than 150 flight hours are a level speed of 255 knots. It is 472 km per hour in level flight. A high rate of climb and descent. Load factors which are more than 2G at high speed. An advance ratio of 0.67 has been demonstrated. Auto-rotation capability has been demonstrated. And also all helicopters pilots flying on this aircraft have observed that it was very easy to be piloted. I think that there is a small problem to switch to the next slide. Yeah. Because there was a message yes on the computer. Okay. Okay, thank you. Sorry for the disturbance. What are the main objectives of racer demonstration? This compound rotorcraft is not an airplane, even if fitted with wings and propellers, but it is better than an helicopter with a cruise speed of 220 knots, which is slightly above 400 kilometers per hour, by keeping the performance in over of a conventional helicopter. The perspective is to have an aircraft meeting the expectation of citizens by offering higher efficiency for rescue and emergency services and higher capacity in terms of door-to-door mobility. Limitation of environmental impact is a strong objective of the project. We will obtain a low acoustic footprint by using specific characteristics of the formula. The reduction of the fuel consumption and consequently the CO2 emission is a strong target thanks to the efficiency of the wing and the propulsion and a strong drag reduction of the fuselage. This research program is also the opportunity to develop until TRL6 eco-friendly technologies and materials to ensure a greener life cycle of the product. Thanks to this demonstration, we will de-risk the development of a new configuration and prepare a competitive product ready for the next decade. The main differences of Racer compared to X-Cube are the configuration of the wing and the position of the lateral rotor, which are in pusher configuration. This unique design of the wing that we call box wing has a high stiffness which facilitates the integration of the lateral drive shaft, which is located in the upper wing, and the integration of the landing gear in the lower wing. It creates also a physical barrier between the access area, which is in the front of the fuselage, and the lateral rotors located in the rear. It gives also high aerodynamic efficiency in over and forward flight. This slide is comparing the configuration of X-Cube and Racer. How this fast rotorcraft is running. Main limitation for high conventional helicopters are the Mach number of the advancing blade, and this problem is balanced by a reduction of rotor speed in cruise. The retreating blade stall, leading to reduced lift of the rotor, is compensated by the lift of the wing. The drive system is similar to a conventional helicopter with the main gearbox driven by the engines. The tail transmission is cancelled and each lateral rotor is driven by a lateral output on each side of the main gearbox. Main rotor and lateral rotor are permanently linked to the drive system with a constant gear ratio. In over, Racer is controlled like a conventional helicopter with collective and cyclic pitch control of the main rotor. Yaw control is ensured by differential pitch of lateral rotors. Lateral rotors are providing also anti-torque. In forward flight, main rotor is still providing the major part of the lift. Other part is provided by the wing. Lateral rotors provide thrust to compensate drag. Main rotor cyclic pitch ensures the roll and the pitch control of the aircraft. Tail surface are controlled by autopilot in order to trim the attitude of the aircraft. Control principle remains very similar of conventional helicopter, and there is no change on aircraft configuration following the speed. First analysis of the certification requirements. The target of RACER is to demonstrate the feasibility of an operational aircraft, and feasibility of certification is part of the demonstration. To prepare it, we have performed a preliminary analysis of potential certification basis with the help of a dedicated working group, including Airbus helicopter experts and external experts, and some of these experts were former EASA experts. The result of the analysis has been considered for the RACER preliminary design. First of all, the working group has analyzed the applicability of reference regulation, mainly CS 29, which was applicable to this size of aircraft. It is clear that RACER configuration is answering to the definition of a rotorcraft, as main part of the lift is generated by a rotor. It is more questionable to classify it as an helicopter, even if the propulsion of horizontal motion is done by its lateral rotors and not by its main rotor. Main conclusion of this analysis is that CS29 for large rotorcraft is relevant for this type of aircraft. Nevertheless, the specificity of RACER will lead to consider several special conditions. As some systems are close of those used by airplane, a reference to airplane regulation could be obvious. It has been considered by the working group that commuter part of CS23 will be the most relevant when reference to an airplane regulation is necessary. Potential certification basis. The working group has identified 42 paragraphs of CS29 which have to be adapted or completed, leading to 39 special conditions. 17 paragraphs of CS23 and 4 paragraphs of CSP have been used also to establish special condition proposals. The diagram gives the distribution of special conditions according to the subparts of CS29. They are mainly relative to flight subpart, strength, and design and construction subpart. Few considerations on operational aspect. An aircraft based on RACER concept, due to its characteristic, can be operated as an helicopter with the same regulation. It has the capacity to take off and land from the same type of surface. It will be certified according with Category A requirement, allowing Class 1 or Class 2 operations. It can also perform hoisting mission like a conventional helicopter. It is also possible to take benefit of its performance. For example, the higher speed will facilitate the integration in air traffic, as well as higher rate of climb or descent. Its specific characteristic will allow to propose optimized trajectory, limiting noise footprint to have a better integration in inhabited areas. As conclusion, there is no need to create new certification rules for this type of compound rotorcraft. CS29 large rotorcraft will be the baseline. Several special conditions will have to be developed to cover the specific feature of this aircraft. In terms of operation, helicopter rules remains applicable. Nevertheless, characteristics of this aircraft offer new capabilities to customers. These conclusions are those of a non-official working group, but nevertheless having a strong experience in rotorcraft certification. It should be validated with authorities when the characteristic of commercial product will be frozen. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Philippe. So now we will start the first session of question and answer. So we can take the question first from the audience over there, and then we will proceed to the Slido questions, depending how much we will get. So what are your questions? Please do not hesitate to address yourself to the speakers. Thank you. No questions? Strange. So let's start with there is one. Okay.
Hello, my name is Ibrahim Şahin Ceylan from Turkish Aerospace Industry. As far as we know, CS23 was reorganized by EASA in order to encourage the applicant to new technologies and to reduce bureaucratic activities for certification review items. Will EASA have any plan for reorganizing of CS27 and 29?
So, good morning, everybody. David Solar, the new acting head of Rotorcraft department in EASA. I will take over these questions because, yes, indeed, we don't know yet. That's a bit early to tell you. We will, in the frame of 2018, develop with the industry and operators kind of a consultation and try to develop a roadmap on what to do with the CS27, even up to the CS29, why not? Opening some of the aspects. We are also willing to work with our bilateral partner. You know, the FAA has issued very recently, last week or a couple of weeks ago, the FAA Safety Continuum. So we have to position ourselves on that, and we committed to have some EASA position by the first quarter next year, and see where we are heading towards. So and give you the visibility on what's EASA position and way forward. So a bit early. Probably next symposium we will have more information to share, and it will be most probably one of the presentation next year. Thank you.
Good morning, David Abad from European Copic Association. Talking about the RACER project, do you expect any kind of difference in training, in licensing for the pilots? Should be helicopter pilots, fixed-wing pilots with bridge course or something like that? What do you expect for that?
Yes, we don't go yet in details on this aspect of pilot license, But as I do the remarks during the presentations, all the helicopter pilots which have flown on X-Cube, and there was several tens of them flying on this demonstrator, have no difficulty to take the control of this type of aircraft. And we consider that it could be an extension of helicopter pilot license to pilot this type of aircraft.
Yes, if I may just rebound a bit on that. What these kind of aircraft are showing, and I put together the Racer or the tilt rotor from Leonardo or some new projects that are coming in, air taxi operations that are there, and that's probably not rotorcraft, probably not aircraft, something in between, new kind of technology, multi-rotors. What does it show? It shows that today we cannot separate the machine from the operation, from the licensing. And when such a machine are coming to the market, we need to have a real transverse view on the impact, and to enable them into the market, we need to take that all into account. And that's something we are fully aware of. There are some difficulties behind because some of the regulation lead times are completely different. You can update a CS 27, 29 fairly quickly, between brackets. Now, when it's down to the operation and licensing, it's more something which is linked to a law, and it's not a soft law, it's a hard law. And here, the lead time of regulation is much more complicated. And that's something we need to take into account upfront and address it quite early with all the stakeholders behind. It's not easy, but we are trying to convince our stakeholder that it's the key points to be on board. If I give you an example, in GA we have a certified single turbine engine aircraft, and by the way, there is no operations allowed in Europe for this kind of aircraft. So we forgot to put out the regulation requirement, the ops requirement aligned with the machine. And so we have a machine that actually needs to be operated under either Annex 2 or with exemptions from countries, because the operations that are in the rule today are not aligned with the machine itself. So these kind of things, now we are learning, obviously, and that's a more holistic approach that we should take, especially with the new technology coming in, where the boundaries between airworthiness operations, training, maintenance, and so on are very much blurred.
Isham Amara from Zodiac Aerospace. We heard that there is several projects of compound aircraft, mixing helicopters, rotorcraft, and aircraft capabilities. Is there a new regulation foreseen to cover this kind of aircraft, or only regulation based on case-by-case basis will be applied?
So far, the different technology we are facing are completely different from one to another. So that there is no one-fits-all regulation that could be set up. If I take the Racer, it's different from a tilt rotor. If I take some other project with multi-rotors, up to 18 actually, it's fixed rotors, by the way. Propulsion is also very much different, conventional engines, electrical engines, mix of them. So far, there is no real added value to have one does fit all. So we are dealing with ad hoc. If at the end of the day we start seeing a common ground, that will be something that will be considered. But so far, it's very much widespread.
Yeah, I think that if I may just add to that, it comes back a bit to the basic philosophy of how we write regulations. Because we were talking about CS 23 and 29 and 27. Well, CS 23, we've gone to more objective rules with industry standards to fill in. So I think that the aim anyway is to go to a more performance-based environment and more objective rules. So I think if we take that approach, there's more scope for having a rule that can be applied to different types of technology and machines and operations. So let's have a look at how that pans out in the future as we look at the Part 27. We look at drones, how have we operate, Patrick said he didn't know the difference between a drone and a rotorcraft. So let's have a look at the philosophy we've applied in those areas and see if we can then consider how best to move forwards.
Michel Gobert from Airbus Helicopters. A question on EHOPS. Thank you, Matteo, for this interesting presentation, but I have not understood why you speak of extended range in the acronym, because as I understood, if I understood correctly, the range is not extended or increased. You propose a concept of helicopter certification tailored to an operational concept, which is very fine, but I do not see where the range is extended. Thank you.
Yeah, Michel, you're right. It's not an extension in the pure sense. What I do propose is an extension of the protection along the range. Today we fly in areas and with modes which are not protected to failure modes. We may fly an hour and a half off the coast, but the protection we have guaranteed is 30 minutes, in essence. What I basically want to achieve is that all the flights is protected. In that sense, the extension is on the protection, not on the range per se. Yes, there is a difference back to the original ETOPS per se.
Maybe we could look at the Slido's question. Do we have other questions in the room? Here? Take care.
Hello, Monsieur Ragazzi. I noticed you mentioned there's various causes from the safety review, EASA safety review, and there were 44 bird strikes and 7 icing, 1,659 cases of system malfunctions. And EASA's safety analysis shows that 78% of accidents are human error, 22% are system failures. Of the system failures, 7/8 of them are not engine system failures, they're other system failures. Do you think there is any rationale behind the redundancy concept for engines when other systems account for 7/8 of the failures?
All right, so first of all, the question is, let me answer it in this way. Those are occurrences, okay, so events. And certainly this is why in the EHOPS you have group 1 and group 2. So you got actually the need to have systems which are non-depending on the engine number. But one thing does not exclude the other one. Human factor is the risk we face. It is the highest possible risk in this kind of operations. The numbers speak clearly. The question we asked ourselves is how many of those occurrences were due to the fact that our design was not redundant or robust enough to prevent the human factors to act. So we were not giving us an excuse not to think about it because it's human factor. Okay. This is also why in the EHOPS concept, as it's in the ETOPS concept, human factors is part of the equation. It's not just design. Okay, it's training and maintenance and the cockpit, plus the redundancy. On the other bit, that is the numbers, I just want to show that there are numbers, but I don't want to play with the statistics because, for example, when you look at the accident, they got in the Gulf of Mexico some years ago on bird strikes, it was able to kill 10 people in one shot. And it was a Part 29 aircraft, and it was a wake-up call for all of us. That's why I want to dig a little bit down the surface. Okay, so it was just an example to show you the kind of scenarios and threats. It's the EHOPS must be a complete. It must be a complete system. It cannot be just the number of engines and so on. We need to raise the level up here. Okay, up here.
Yes, maybe we can go to the Slido. So the first questions maybe for Airbus helicopter.
Okay, the question is about the restriction of by the lateral rotors of the loading and refueling of Racer. In fact, the specific architecture of Racer in comparison with X-Cube, with the principle of the box wing and the pusher rotors, is to clearly separate the area where people have to work or to go to enter in the aircraft when it is on the ground, and the area of the propellers. And it is our answer at this question is the architecture that we have selected to have a clear separation between the propellers and the area where people have to work on the aircraft. And on the Racer itself, we have designed the refueling system particularly in order to have the refueling system in the front part of the aircraft.
I'll answer the one for EHOPS. So the idea we have is North Sea as a test scenario, just because it's a controlled environment where we see that we have players which could be actually ready, platforms which are ready, and the environment is a controlled one to test the EHOPS concept. It's oil and gas, so very heavy commercial and transport, very high sensitivity. We need to act there and get reputation of this idea. The second question is on the numbers, so the safety level for ETOPS to EHOPS. We didn't want to make a direct correlation between ETOPS and EHOPS in terms of safety objectives, because we have critical paths, they don't. So just putting a number in terms of safety objective is not enough. So we do believe that our EHOPS safety target must be met also with design criteria, which are nothing to do with numbers. This is why I don't like to give a direct correlation to the safety objectives or numerical values. And then the other bit is that we want to tackle also cumulative risk, not a risk per flight only. So we basically would like to tackle a more thorough risk in the broad sense, and that's why we need to look at the equation in a specific context. That's why I mentioned North Sea, for example.
Yes, I think for the other questions we've already answered. Maybe we can go to the one on UK and EASA. Maybe Trevor.
Well, I'm a stakeholder in this question. So it's the question: what will be the future of UK and EASA following effectivity of Brexit? Well, the Commission is leading the discussions and negotiation with the UK on this, and whereas we might advise them as they ask us to, we're not in a position to give any views on it, and there are so many unknowns even still as to which way this could go, and I think we still have the whole range of possible outcomes. So I'm very sorry to say that I can't tell you anything about this. We could probably debate it all day with different scenarios, but we could be here all week actually talking about it. But perhaps this week we may see some news as to the way the negotiations are going. And I think everyone wants the same thing that I've talked to in the aviation community. Especially me as the director of certification. Okay, sorry that I can't say any more about it.
Next one is on the racer, I guess, with the hoist operation.
Yes, host operation has been also considered in the design of racer. First of point, the configuration with the box wing and the pusher lateral rotor helps to perform some hoist operation from an access door which is located in the front of the fuselage. We have performed some static simulation already to check that the configuration will be compatible with hoisting of stretchers. And we have selected to make the hoisting on the left side in order to be on the side where the flow coming from the lateral rotor will be the minimum to have an impact on the stretchers that we can hoist on the helicopter.
I guess I take the one on the safety record because it's an interesting one. And the way it's turned is a bit odd. I would say, yes, the statistics shows that the rotorcraft safety is very much flat since we have a slight increase benefit. It's not huge, but still it's not the target that was expected 10 years ago, I guess. If we were in this room 10 years ago, I think the objective was much more ambitious than what we are today. Now, everything relying on EASA is a bit very simplistic, I would say. For me, it's the industry as a whole, from indeed the design, the certification, the airworthiness, down to the operation, the maintenance, and overall the safety culture within this industry. I think you cannot bring back to one actor of the game, which is fairly new, by the way, and without any things. EASA has its share and a role to play, for sure, a big one. But we are not alone. And at the end of the day, the one operating the aircraft is operators. So that's where we need to start from our way of thinking, back driving the impacts on the all stakeholders of the overall industry. But I think that's what we are willing to move forwards to, is to have all stakeholders on the plate, and each of them is taking his share of responsibilities within the overall safety record of the rotorcraft. Now, we will rely a lot on the Rotorcraft Committee. That is one of the body, stakeholder advisory body for EASA, to not only input valuable action plans to EASA, but also to take responsibilities and to also take back some actions in their own field, from the operation, maintenance, Part 145, part licensing, training organizations, and also airworthiness, design, and things like that. But as I said a bit earlier, we need to look at a more global approach than just airworthiness. And that's really what we will try to do in the future with more collaborative approach, leveraging also a number of expertise. You are the best in the world in the rotorcraft industry. We have some leaders that are in some domains very much at the cutting edge, and we should leverage them. And in Europe, we have this change of quite a huge range of operations, from offshore, HEMS, private use, and stuff like that. We have national authorities that are also very much engaged on the field, and that's what we are willing to leverage a bit more to tackle and to make the safety jump we need in the future.
I'd just like to add something to that because fully support what David said, and I'll give you an example of something where you can ask the question, have we been wasting our time? We and you have been developing rules, and what happens? Do they get used? Well, how many of you have introduced a new helicopter type? And how many of you introduced derivatives or modifications to existing types? So, for example, fuel tank crashworthiness. How many aircraft comply with that? So yes, we've been developing between us a lot of rules, but we need to take the harvest from those rules now. And I think we can't just keep on saying it's a derivative, it's a modification. We need to look at those safety benefits and get them into the machines that we're flying. If an aircraft has been in production for 20 years, the same design, and yet it still complies with rules that are 20 years old, is that what we're looking for? I don't think so. So we need to take the benefit of a lot of work that we've been doing and find a way to implement it into the operational lives that we live. Okay.
Just to rebound, yes, fuel tank crashworthiness is a perfect example. We have been working on rules for 25 years almost. The rules is dated from 94, you are all aware of that. Now, what's the penetration rate in the market of such technology? It's less than 15%. So today, rotorcraft flying all over the places, only 15% of them, 25 years down the road, are fitted with such technology. So you see there is something which is very strange in the rotorcraft industry. I'm coming from fixed wing, where you have economical incentive to change your machine, to step up because you have fuel burn benefits. Here, in rotorcraft, we need to find the right leverage to embrace new types, new technology, in a cheap way, probably, than it's done in fixed wing. But that's something, the questions I'm raising to you, and that we will be really ready to engage a fruitful dialogue on that, how to make changes in this industry, not killing the industry, but preparing the industry for the future. One last figure, average age of a rotorcraft in Europe is 21-year-old. Average. So would you think your car 21 years ago was the same safety level as the one that you would buy today? Would you say, you've spoken a lot on a human factor, would you think human factor interface of a car 25 years ago is exactly the same as of today? Would you see some improvement? So that's these questions we are willing to raise, discuss, but not only discussion for discussions, having concrete actions at the end of the day to develop with you together. And that's what I said, it's the whole industry. We are ready to promote, safe operator, and that's really something we want to discuss with you.
Mr. Chairman, I think we covered most of the questions. We also discussed the question in Slido. Now, before we go for the coffee break, the EASA team has prepared some gifts for the presenters. If you want to give them with a round of applause for the two presenters of this morning.
So, thank you.
Thank you very much. So coffee break. Please come back to 11. You need a pen.
The third gift. Don't worry.